Hello and welcome to the Stormont Sources podcast, where we take you inside politics at Stormont and inside policy making for Northern Ireland. I'm David McCann, and also on the podcast are Tim Kearns, former special advisor to DUP First Minister Peter Robinson. He was also head of policy for the party. Hello, Tim.
Hi, David.
And we also have Michael McKernan, former special advisor to the SDLP. He has worked across a number of departments in the executive from 2007 to 2016. Hello, Michael.
Hello, David. Hello, Tim.
All right, happy 12th, lads, as we recover from this holiday weekend. So on the podcast today, we are discussing the events of the 12th of July with a focus on bonfires and parades that have been dominating the headlines. This week also, we've had a dispute over GAA participation in a cricket camp from a local Orange Lodge. We're asking today, are we seeing the right leadership in the right areas to bridge the divide over these cultural issues? Then, the Sinn Féin president, Mary Lou McDonald, visited London this week to make a push for a border poll. She stopped by the Good Morning Britain studios to make her case, but the interviewer, Richard Madeley, did not have very positive things to say about the Northern Ireland economy. The interview and statements by McDonald during the interview have been criticised by the Deputy First Minister, Mary Lou McDonald, for talking Northern Ireland down. Today we're looking at, do we need to get real about the true state of our economy, and does Emma Pengelly have a point? And finally, we are looking at the front page of the Irish News today, which highlights MLA expenses. And we're also going to take a look at some of the claims made. And we're also going to look at comments from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, today about prosecutions of veterans during the Troubles. All that coming up on a jam-packed Stormont Sources. You can join the conversation on YouTube. You can search for Stormont Sources, where we upload clips and full episodes for you to enjoy. Head to YouTube, subscribe to our channel there for videos and updates. You can also follow us on X, watch clips on TikTok. Make sure you subscribe to our mailing list at stormontsources.com. Remember to leave us a review on your podcast app. It really, really helps. Although anything less than 4 stars, please don't bother. And we also love hearing from you. We will have a Q&A episode coming up very soon. You can WhatsApp us on 0333 404 6507. Remember to use the word Stormont. Also drop us an email, hello@stormontsources.com. On to our first topic. This is the time of year when unionism celebrates historic victories with the 12th of July celebrations. On the 11th of July, bonfires are set alight, one in particular in South Belfast, which was near asbestos, caused a lot of tension, with Belfast City Council seeking to get this removed, and with criticism about the bonfire coming in from Alliance, SDLP and Sinn Féin. This approach has been criticised within unionism as an attempt to stop a cultural tradition. And this week we had another incident emerge which touches upon cultural issues. So a cross-community sports summer camp in County Down in the town of Comber had been cancelled after opposition to the involvement of a small group of children from a GAA club. So a North Down cricket club which had planned the event for young people from different backgrounds, including some from East Belfast GAA, has had to cancel the event due to criticism from a local Orange Lodge, who said that there was, and I quote, a perceived move of the GAA, which is the Gaelic Athletic Association, into the local community, which there were claims that it had annoyed some local residents. So the cricket club had said, following on from this, that the spirit of the camp was at risk of being lost, and they have now decided not to proceed with the event. So let's talk a little bit about everything we've seen over the past week. Tim, from the bonfires to the story which is broken today, and we are recording on Wednesday, the 16th of July, 2025 in the afternoon. What have you made of what you've seen over the past week, from the bonfires to this story about kids playing together?
I think maybe if we start from today and work backwards is probably the easiest way to do it. Now, I think the story today is ill-judged. I think the statement is ill-judged, but it's very clear.
Whose statement? Just for clarity, whose statement?
So the Orange Order's statement today, or the particular lodge in Cumber, I think their statement today is ill-judged, but I do think it comes from a place, and wrongly, in my opinion, it does come from a place where they feel that they're reacting to stories that have been in the media in the last week about the 12th of July. I mean, over the weekend, it really was from Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The stories really were silly season from some nationalist representatives and some Republican commentators and the like on Twitter and in newspapers. I mean, there's just mass hysteria that seems to just swell up within nationalism, republicanism when it comes to the 12th. Now, I think there's a reaction to that, and it has come in this statement from the Orange Order the Orange Order Lodge in Cumber, and I think that is a wrong reaction. I think there's no doubt some of the stuff reached absolute silly season over the weekend, and a lot of the things that people said were going to come to pass didn't come to pass, and some people were almost disappointed that there was no trouble and no issues, and some people were just expressing just frankly ridiculous views online, and I think we need leadership on both sides of the divide here. I think what we need to see is a bit more tolerance on both sides. Look, the Orange Order has issues. There's no doubt about this. The Orange Order, particularly in Belfast, has image issues. They need to deal with that. They need to address that. The parade in Belfast and other parades in Belfast, quite frankly, do not provide a welcoming environment. Even for some unionists don't feel welcome in going, and maybe as our conversation develops, I can tell you why I don't go to Belfast parades anymore. But I think also on the other side of things, the GAA has an image problem. They do allow stadiums and facilities to be named after people that they should not be named after, and the GAA do not provide leadership on that. And the Orange Order do not provide leadership on what happens at some of their parades, particularly in Belfast. But what I think we need to see is leadership from the Orange Order, leadership from the GAA, leadership from nationalist politicians, leadership from unionist politicians. And I think we need to try and work towards a place where we say, you know what? There are things that we're not going to agree with that are going to go on in this place. There are things that we just are going to be stuff that we find unacceptable, strange, stuff that we just don't want to see happening, perhaps. But I think we've got to get to the place where we're a little more mature and say, it's not about me all the time. But the people can get on and do that as long as they're not crossing the line of legality and illegality. And people do this, and let's just tolerate it a bit more. I think that's the mature place we need to get to.
Sure, and there were a number of political reactions over the weekend and today. Politicians speaking on different aspects, but then also those who didn't speak, which I'm going to unpack in a little second. But Michael, just your synopsis, just where we've been, because obviously we checked in last week. Tim asked Jamie Bryson, a leading loyalist commentator, about the bonfire, and Jamie gave a very unrepentant response. But from then on, right up until today, what have you made of what we've seen?
Well, to the latest episode concerning the sports camp at the cricket club is deeply depressing, that people should feel hostile to children doing sport together. In my own community, I could not imagine that a bunch of young cricketers would visit a GAA club and that it would cause some problem in the community. In fact, if it did, I think that problem would be dealt with very quickly. But anyway, I'm not interested in having a pop at the Orange Order. I'm not interested in having a pop at bonfires or paraders. All I'll say is that there are a small minority of people in Northern Ireland who are full of hatred, or at the very least, deeply prejudiced. And that might be racism, might be sectarianism, might even be misogyny. And it comes to a head more than average at this time of year. And it does seem to centre itself around bonfires, parades, and the celebration of the 12th. So we ask ourselves, what is the 12th all about? And I've been to Rusnile, I've seen numerous orange parades, different parts of Northern Ireland, and I think it varies depending on where you are. But on the one hand, it's a festival of people celebrating their identity, proud in their music, their smart uniforms, and a big social dimension where they're meeting each other, particularly rural areas and so on. We see the success that the Rusnile parade is. But on the other hand, there is a undercurrent in some places of belligerence. This is our time to assert what we did in the past. This is our time to reassert what we did in 1690 when the Protestants had victory over the Catholics. And we remind them that we were dominant and we're still dominant. And if we need to reassert ourselves again, by Jesus, we will. And the belligerence that goes with that can be something minor, like parking awkwardly on roads to make it difficult for people to get around. I mean, why do we think a lot of the shops and hospitality places close? Why do so many people, Protestant and Catholic, nationalists and unions, scarper during the festival? The shops close. No. I mean, they want to make money. And I saw an exchange between yourself and Tim, where Tim's explanation was people just were entitled to a day off. Okay, if that's the explanation, fine. But to my mind, it's they don't want to face the manifestation of this belligerence, whether it's just mouthy people in their shop or whatever it might be. That undercurrent's there. I don't know how you deal with it, and we had the. There's no point in going into the individual, the boat and the asbestos. I mean, that boat thing is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace for all of us. That we, particularly on the back of all the racist directed violence we've had in recent weeks. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. The bonfire with the asbestos, well, that's just irresponsible. And there's 300 bonfires went off perfectly well, no problem. And yet people, from a health perspective, raising issues about one of them is a big attack on loyalist culture, and Jamie Bryson and co have to dig in around it. Well, okay, dig in around it, but I wonder where those little filaments that are blasted into the air that evening are going to end up in people's throats and whatever. It's just a bit sad. I'll go back to what Tim said. We need leadership. Because it's largely a unionist Protestant festival, then we need the leadership from unionist leaders when things go wrong. And just to recognise that they go wrong and to try and address it. We're not getting that, and we do need leadership all around. But in this context, we particularly need it from the leaders of unionism.
Well, I do want to go back to Tim, because I appreciate that it can come across like Tim's meant to answer for everything that the DUP do or don't do. But I do want to answer, because it was noted and has been commented upon, from the bonfire through to today, and as of time of recording, again, this may change by the time this goes out on Thursday. Where's Gavin been? Where has the DUP been over all of this stuff? I mean, am I wrong? Is that maybe just a nationalist perception? But they have been. I know Emma made a comment on the bonfire, but it was, to me, I just thought it was very banal. But Gavin has been nowhere. Even in Comber, which is in Strangford, the strongest DUP constituency in Northern Ireland, the deputy leaders, the local MLA, they've got a DUP MP. Where am I being unfair, or maybe just in reading too much into that as a nationalist?
Well, I think you're probably only telling half the story, because the other side of the story is I think nationalist politicians inflamed the situation. Republican politicians inflamed the situation over the weekend. Well,
over the weekend, okay.
So over the past weekend, I think we've seen a number of contributions in the BBC, which you may not consider inflamed things, but I think the unionists and loyalists consider that it did. And I think we saw some stuff Friday and Saturday, which I think was designed for likes and retweets and good old claps in the back from social media. And that's unhelpful too, because that just produces, on the other side of things, people thinking that they're being oppressed, that they're being put upon. So I think nationalists need to dial it back at the 12th, and unionists need to step it up. And I think both sides failed. Nationalists, some of the Republicans, some of the tweeting, some of the contributions, just frankly ridiculous and was inflaming tensions. Unionists on the other side of the fence, I don't think they were providing enough leadership or saying as much as they should have said. So I think it goes back to what I said before. We all need to take a step back, I think, in Northern Ireland. And I think we all need to say, look, there's stuff that's going to happen in this place. We're not necessarily going to like it, but provided it stays on the right side of the law, then we just should tolerate it. And it may not be something I like today, but it's going to be something that I'm going to like tomorrow. And I think we need, if we could be a society that lived with that attitude, I think we get on a lot better. And if we stop vitriolic tweets and nonsense, and we stop people just saying nothing and burying their head in the sand, I think we'd have a much better society.
So obviously there were a couple of things. And Michael, you touched upon this as well about shops closing. So the Irish News have gone out and done a survey of 50 businesses in Belfast. They found that 31 of them were closed. And why are we bringing this up? Well, we're bringing this up because there was another political exchange. I know we all spend too much time on Twitter, but Jonathan Buckley the DUP MLA for Upper Ban was critiquing, I think it was a Tourism NI Facebook post where basically it was listing all the things that were kind of on over the summer, the different festivals and things like that. It had Pride, it had Fela and things like that on. I didn't mention the 12th. And then Sinead McLaughlin, SDLP MLA for Foyle, quote tweeted it and said, well, Johnny, everything closes. Everything closes. There's a kind of that there really wasn't anything to kind of celebrate. Michael, what I mean is
we would have
Tim have a point?
We would have got a few Scottish visitors over the festival period, but I think the reason people close, and apart from the fact that it is the holiday season and people are taking holidays, small businesses and so on, but I think a lot of it is they don't want to face a difficult day's trading with belligerent customers who think they can walk all over them, and just a difficult day. It's not worth it. And I was in Belfast. I was in around Belfast on the 11th night and so on, and that whole afternoon, evening, the place was deserted. Although it was party time in the Sandy Row, but it was the place was deserted.
It was dead. It was dead on Saturday as well. Round Cathedral Quarter was where the three of us were about 3 weeks ago. Where same type of weather, where you couldn't get moving in the place, and it was dead. It was absolutely dead.
I think it's interesting for a MLA who's from Londonderry, I believe that's what the constituency.
Foyle. Let's get the constituency right now.
I think she's from Londonderry, and we hear, nobody cares about the North West, and suddenly then we're told everybody's decamping to the Northwest, and suddenly that's a terrible thing. I mean, look,
they're going to Donegal, Tim.
They weren't. They weren't. Portshire Strand packed, beaches in Portrush packed, Coleraine Town Centre for the parade there packed. Got parades outside of Belfast packed. Over 200,000 people at parades. What is it, about 450,000, 500,000 people, something like that, vote for unionist parties, and 200,000 people turn up to watch the 12th. I mean, this is whatever that is, 35% or whatever it is of the unionist electorate is turning out just to stand on the street. So, I mean, to be that stupid in the tweet that she put out, and frankly, that's what it was. It was a stupid tweet that she put out, and it was designed to be liked and to get retweets and for her to feel desperately good about herself while she was sitting in her house on Friday night. Oh, aren't I so clever? And look, 700 people have liked it and retweeted it. And man, I quote tweeted something back to her and got 500 or 600 likes. I mean, it's not hard to get likes on Twitter. And if that's how you're judging your political success, I mean, you really need to do better than that. Maybe the SDLP, instead of concentrating on Twitter likes, might be better concentrating on votes, because they're not going to get votes attacking the DUP and the Orange Order, because they can't out-green Sinn Féin. I mean, they've been trying to do this since 2003. So a wee bit of free political advice for Sinead. Maybe try and get a bit of shoe leather on the ground, knock a few doors, and maybe get a few votes and a few less Twitter likes, and you might get on better, and actually your seat might be a wee bit safer. But anyway, that's by the by. Look, clearly in Northern Ireland, the 12th provides a commercial boost. And there has been studies on this. I think the last one was in 2013, and it provided a £35 million boost to the economy. If you take that, if you were to extrapolate that up with inflation, what's that going to be?
Why is Belfast? But I mean, just for someone who doesn't, you would be closer to it than I would. But why then is the city? Maybe it is just a Belfast thing, Tim. Maybe you're right.
I think there's a perception.
Why is it's on a warm sunny day? And again, Cathedral Quarter should have been buzzing on Saturday with the weather.
Well, I think there's a perception amongst city centre traders, and I think they're of a political persuasion that is not, of orange. I mean, I don't know how to put this as delicately as I can. I don't think
they're taking over everywhere.
I don't think the owners of the bars you're talking about are closing down because they're marching on the 12th. I think that's what we've got to say.
Why would they give up a day straight?
Because I think
giving away money.
There's a hysteria, I think, in the city centre, and particularly amongst city centre traders, that I don't think's justified. Nobody's going to be coming in like Michael Sinn and lording it over anybody. That's nuts. I mean, Tim Hortons was open, and I mean it's right beside the parade, and there was a stack of Canadian tourists.
Good Canadian loyalist organisation.
A stack of Canadian tourists who I've seen on TikTok and on Facebook and on Twitter, you know, saying, "You've got this parade here. What's this all about? At least I can get my Tim Hortons." And you know, it's been quite funny to see a number of those videos.
Just as well they didn't want a pint.
So clearly those places can open. But I do think in Belfast there is undoubtedly an image problem with Orange Order parades in Belfast, and I don't think the Orange Order has done enough to address that image problem. You know, I have not been to a parade in Belfast since 2012. I will not go back to a parade in Belfast. I would not take my children to a parade in Belfast.
Because the interesting thing is, Tim, and the reason why I bring this up is that you're not the only unionist who has said this to me. I mean, I know unionists.
There's a great piece on by Choya on your website.
I know people who are in the Orange Order. Belfast would be their local parade, by the way. That would be where they would go to just by distance. They refuse. They refuse to go. So why is that, Tim? Why would you not take your kids to it? Why have you not been since 2012?
Well, there's a great piece, and I can't do better in explaining it. And I contacted him after I saw it on your website, Slugger O'Toole, by Choya. I think that's how you pronounce that name. And this is about the 1st of July parade. And actually he referenced, you know, my church are doing their best to try and give out 1,000 free hot dogs in the midst of all of this. There's a particular problem, I think, in Belfast in and around some of the trappings that are carried. I think there's a problem in and around Belfast in terms of the crowds are just, frankly, blocked, for want of a better term, and it's not a pleasant experience to stand and watch. I think there are songs that are played and tunes that are played in Belfast that I don't really want my kids hearing. So the last time I was there was 2012, and it was actually the 1st of July parade, the one that Choya was at just a few weeks ago, and we left and went home because I didn't want my kids to be in an environment. And I guess I'm sounding like desperately middle class here, and I apologise for that, but I didn't want my kids.
You are desperately middle class.
Yeah, well, horribly middle class or whatever it was the BBC used to describe it.
It's not that bad a way to be.
So, and I didn't want my kids to hear these songs. You know, these were things that I grew up with that I wish I hadn't have grown up with. And I did not want them to grow up knowing the songs and you know, having a dislike for people in our community in the way that in the 1980s that I grew up. So we left and we went home. That's saying I've never been back to a Belfast parade again. We've been to parades outside of Belfast. We've been to parades in country areas, and they are completely different. It is like night and day. The atmosphere is different. It is better marshaled. It is better controlled. You would be hard pressed to see some of the things you would see in Belfast. And I actually think you don't see, or certainly I haven't seen some of the things you see in Belfast. So Belfast does have an image problem, and the Orange Order needs to provide leadership in that, but they don't. I mean, it's very simple. You say you cannot carry any regalia of an organisation that would be prescribed. You cannot play this list of songs, even though these are tunes that there's different words to. We all know what the songs are you're playing. You cannot play them in this parade. And you enforce that. And if a band or a lodge transgresses that, they're banned next year. And I think another thing that needs to happen in Belfast is the parade route needs to be shorter. It's far too long. And it disrupts. But they did, but in some way it needs to be shortened. And I don't know what the solution is. That I'm bringing up problems here. I'm not bringing up solutions. I appreciate that. And if there's anybody from the Orange Order who's listening, I'm sure they know these problems. They've discussed these problems. They've tried to fix these problems. And I don't have any solutions for you. But it disrupts far too much of the city. It's far too long a parade. There's far too much around that parade that honestly is objectionable. And I think that needs to be stopped, and I think does not lead to conducive society. But I think on the other side of things, I think, you know, let's not bash the Orange Order. There are things that are going to happen in Belfast in 3 or 4 weeks' time that are going to be objectionable, that are going to be horrible, that are going to be ingrained sectarianism, that are not going to be dealt with and not by nationalist and Republican leaders. You know, we're going to have
You're participating in that, Tim, aren't you?
Well, yes. I mean, David's dragged me into that Republican fest. I said,
It's waiting for one of us to say it.
I said 5 years ago, I'm never going to do this again. And David, I will not take part in your Republican sectarian fest anymore. And somehow, and I don't know how, a moment of absolute weakness, I said yes. And I'm also doing the dairy version as well in the
Well,
week
now
after.
you're only
So,
saying that because Tim got stick. It did, by the way, and the reason why Tim, by the way, for context, said that was because he got stick because he was having to go with teachers during the pandemic. It was nothing to do with politics. It was to do with having. It was to do with he gave stick to teachers.
all I can say is I have never had more messages into my Twitter than I got from teachers. And you know what I really wanted to do was print them off, correct them because the grammar was horrific, the spelling was awful, and I felt like printing them off, correcting it, and posting it back to them. As if these are the people that are teaching our
I've
children.
noticed that.
My
I've noticed
goodness.
that extremists have terrible spelling and lousy grammar.
But
But anyway, when you're up at the
Michael.
dairy version of the festival, that'll be an opportunity for you to further discuss the psychology of Sinead McLaughlin with herself, and maybe even to spend some further political advice to her.
Well,
There we
I
go.
do think it's
There we go.
important to say that the festival we're talking about, the one in Belfast, is going to have a night that is basically a problematic evening where ooh ah the rah
Sure.
is going to be
Well-
sung, and no one's going to come out on the Republican and nationalist side of things and stop it. They haven't stopped it for 15 years, so there's a problem across the divide.
No, there is, Tim. But again, and look, we will undoubtedly get to Fela in August time. But the one qualification I would just give, not, and by the way, Fela should stop with that. I've told them this. They should stop with those two, because it is two songs that are the problematic songs, Tim. But yeah, I get that. From a unionist point of view, you're looking at that going, what in the name of God? So I get it. And they should stop it, because Fela actually, if you take those two songs out of it, Fela, compared to what was there before, has been a big success story in terms of what was there before. It's been a massive improvement, but we will get to Fela in thing. And the great thing is, Tim, you can come along and you can tell them that yourself on the panel on the 6th of August at 3 p.m. in St. Mary's if you're about, Michael. And thank you for giving me a chance to plug that. Michael, I want to ask you.
Neve were on Boher on fall.
But we'll bring you along as well, Mike. You can come sit in the audience and you can
Chucky
join them. We do
Arla,
Stormont sources. We do Stormont sources in the Hall of St. Mary's. But what about, Michael, in terms of actually, because Tim has referenced there about nationalist reactions to this, right? And about nationalist reactions, he perceives them whipping things up.
Well, I don't know.
do you
Social
think?
media is an echo chamber, and Tim could well be right about that. I don't know. But in terms of mainstream media statements and so on, I think the nationalists were fairly quiet. I mean, the asbestos bomb fire, I mean, the leader of the opposition,
Some of the reactions
Matthew,
that were bizarre.
but Matthew
I
O'Toole
thought,
just said it was bonkers. He wasn't
Yeah, it's
saying
bonkers,
anything
yeah.
about loyalism or about the 12th of July. He just said it was bonkers to have such a dangerous thing underway. I mean, I don't recall any nationalist saying anything really. Tim would say that would inflame the situation, but maybe there was stuff going on social media in the echo chamber, and I didn't see it.
And yeah, I mean, I some of the phone calls, and they're not representative either, into the radio programs that talked about this from some of the people defending the bonfire was just like next level. Just I don't know what I actually don't know how you respond to some of the comments that were made. It's just,
And the
self-harm.
boat thing, the thing that disappointed me was, okay, the boat thing grabbed attention because it's just so outrageous. And then the asbestos one, to my mind, was irresponsible. But a lot of other bonfires had KAI or KAT, which I think includes the likes of myself. So I don't really appreciate that. And I think it ought to be condemned by unionist leaders, and I didn't hear much
Yeah, it
condemnation of
didn't.
it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that
I
we were talking about.
I do think we've got a cultural problem in Northern Ireland, and it's across the piece. There are things that are unacceptable on both sides of the divide that are not called out, and that's the problem. And then people try to justify theirs and say, but kneecap, but the fella, but, and to me that's to use Matthew O'Toole's word, that's bonkers. Call out kneecap and call out the boats. It's not either or. It's not just because them ones are doing it, then we can get away with it. No. You got to be better. We've got to do better. So I think we've got to call out our own side. and we've got to take the speck out of our own eye before we deal with the mote in our neighbour's eye. I mean that, and if we could live by that principle a little bit more here, I think we would have a better society.
I also think the authorities ought to do a lot more, not just the politicians. They make arrests,
right.
and they charge people in soft situations. Remember the girls out on the Me Too protest, and they were all rounded up and so on. Whereas they ignore. Yeah, you can go all sides. Bobby's Story funeral. You can, they weren't going to do anything about the asbestos because it would lead to greater disorder than if they went in, and so on. The authorities need to do more. That boat thing should not be allowed with nobody accountable for it, and nobody accountable for all the KAI and KAT. But also on other sides, the authorities need to do more. I'm not saying that in every situation they can intervene meaningfully and safely, but where they can, they should.
Yeah, and again, I think this leads me on to kind of the last point I wanted to talk about on this, is that, our different layers of government didn't exactly cover themselves in glory on this, because one of the things that I wasn't aware of, to my shame, because I've been to loads of Belfast City Council meetings and I haven't heard it raised, has been this asbestos has been there for 8 years or so. It's been left there beside a school for 8 whole years. I remember I heard it was in a report, I think it was on BBC, and I heard a lady in that from that community talking about this, and basically what they've had to put up with. I mean, Tim, you've tweeted about it. I've tweeted about it. I mean, if this was Ormeau Park, this was Comber Greenway, if this was Belfast Castle or Stormont Estate, would that really have been left there for so long?
Not a chance. No, and that is the scandal here. I mean, forget about the bonfire. That's a sideshow, and it all passed off, and whatever about all of that. It's an absolute scandal that a working class community. Well, I think there's 2 scandals in this actually. One is that a working class community has had to live since 2011. My goodness, 13 years beside a health hazard. You say, well, the site's secured. Kids are going to climb on the site. They're not going to know what's asbestos and what's not asbestos. And they're going to climb over these mountains and all this sort of thing. Who knows what kids have been doing, having snowball fights with asbestos or whatever on that site that we used to see at the shipyard, pictures of that 40, 50 years ago of people doing that. And they didn't know what the harm was. I think the second thing that's a scandal is there's a site in an area of housing need that is laying vacant now for goodness knows how many years. Whenever there's a desperation for housing, social housing in that area, that's the scandal. So let's see who in the media is going to pick this up, because we were told last week, 16th of July, the expert contractors are coming in, they're going to take this asbestos away, and there's going to be a period of decontamination, and then building work's going to start. Well, let's see, because this trouble will not be here this time next year. If that happens and the building of houses is started on that site, there'll be no bonfire there next year then. But I depressingly suspect asbestos will still be there, a bonfire will be back, and we'll be back to discussing this again. Won't that be depressing?
Yeah, Michael, and I mean, there is a thing here about what we expect working class communities across the piece, what they have to put up with here. I mean, the thing is that our political class, quite often, and if you look at, for example, childcare costs, for example, been an issue in working class communities for more than a decade. But from 2021, middle class families start feeling the pinch really badly, and then Stormont springs into action. So, I mean, is there not something in that we maybe expect our working classes to put up with a bit too much?
No, it's not that we expect them, I don't think, but I think it's the nature of liberal democracies all over the world that the people with a bit of financial power end up having more political power, and the economic power leads to political power. And if you live on the Malone Road, your experience at the hands of the various authorities in every walk of life is likely to be different than if you live in Twinbrook or Rathcoole. That's just how it is, and it's up to people to press their politicians more to change that.
The everyday health inequalities between the Malone Road and the village. I mean, I can't remember what the figure is, but it's
educational, huge differences in educational attainment, as well as health outcomes.
Look, guys, if you go to my own constituency in North Belfast, start at the top of Donegal Park Avenue and work your way down to the bottom, which ends at the Shore Road. The life expectancy, the inequalities between those two areas, you literally in the space of 10 minutes will go from 6, 7 bedroom houses down to literally houses where literally I've seen flats with basically the windows are broken and they're just boarded up, but people are still living in them with wood, with plywood. Like, so it's not good enough. And all our communities, working class communities across the piece, deserve more. Okay, we'll move on to our next topic. Mary Lou McDonald, the Sinn Féin president, was visiting the Good Morning Britain studios this week on ITV to make another push for a referendum on Irish unity. Now, during the interview, Richard Madeley, one of the presenters, asked her why she would want Northern Ireland, given its economy. So lamenting the amount of UK money that is put into Northern Ireland and describing it as a basket case. Now, Mary Lou McDonald argued that partition was one of the reasons for our economic woes. And interestingly, Mary Lou McDonald's comments drew criticism from the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly, who complained about people talking down the Northern Ireland economy. Now, of course, Sinn Féin hold the main economic portfolios within the Northern Ireland executive. So, Michael, should we be worried about Sinn Féin sabotaging our economy via the executive?
No, we shouldn't. I don't think anyone is in a position to sabotage our economy in that way. Nor do I think Irish unity presents a threat to any economy, north or south. But that's a different question. Richard Madeley, although I suspect he doesn't have a detailed knowledge of these subjects, he's right. Our economy is largely a basket case. We have some tremendous companies, but they're small in number. And we are largely a small business economy. We only have to look at our GDP growth over a long period of time, and you can just see how difficult things have been. At the time Northern Ireland was formed, it had 80% of all Ireland GDP. About 20 years ago, that had completely flipped. That Northern Ireland then had 20% and the South had 80%. And we're now heading closer to 10% of all Ireland GDP. And I know we have, in our modern world, we have Holocaust deniers and we have climate change deniers and vaccine skeptics and landing on the moon skeptics. But in Northern Ireland, we have a special breed of denier which denies the prosperity of the Republic of Ireland and the lack of prosperity in Northern Ireland. We are heavily dependent on the UK Exchequer for net transfers into Northern Ireland. And it's an academic argument whether it's 10 billion, 5 billion, 3 billion, whatever. It's a lot. And the Republic would find it difficult to absorb it, but not impossible. And that conversation is probably more realistic now than it has ever been. But, go ahead.
Sorry. Tim, what did you make of? I know you're going to disagree with Mary Lou McDonald's thing, but what did you make of the entire exchange with Richard Madeley? Richard Madeley's comments are the reason why we're talking about this, by the way. Mary Lou McDonald, I thought it was a banal interview from Mary Lou McDonald. She said nothing new, and it was actually quite mild.
When you're running for Irish and Uachtaráin, you just keep things a bit bland.
Well, we'll come back to that. Tim.
But it's classic Sinn Féin, isn't it? Because a couple of weeks ago we're being told, it wouldn't cost a penny to assimilate Northern Ireland and the Republic because the amount of money that Northern Ireland gives in taxes, it would be less than 3 billion. And sure, for the third richest economy in the world, that would be nothing. It would cost almost nothing to happen. And then, of course, the message when Sinn Féin are in London is, they're so expensive for you. Whoa, the cost. You just want Ireland to take that cost. Billions and billions of pounds. And you'd want that to be assimilated. And we'd just make a better fist of it than you once we get it. We'll pay the money, make a better fist of it than you. And we'll turn a profit on a failing entity. And in the midst of that is the irony of, what does Michelle O'Neill think about this? Because if Northern Ireland's a bit crap, and Northern Ireland's a failing entity, your deputy leader's the leader of this mess. So it's just classic Sinn Féin. Take housing. Their view in the south is different to their view in the north. There's so many issues. That they just take opposing views, and I think it's fascinating because, love or loathe Sinn Féin, it's just fascinating to be able to have the brass neck to do that and to get away with it. And they do get away with it. I mean, I completely admire, the absolute political courage to just say these things and just know that you're going to get away with it.
They occasionally get caught. They got caught over the immigrant issue where they were trying to show that they were very progressive and welcoming on the one hand of immigrants and ready to clamp down on it on the other hand, and the people in the South gave them a real electoral shellacking for that.
But that's within the Republic of Ireland. I mean, what I find more fascinating is they say something in Belfast and it's the complete opposite in Dublin. And political journalists in Dublin, maybe it's because they look at Belfast and think that's a sideshow and that doesn't matter. Like, I don't know why Sinn Féin aren't hammered in that. I mean, if I was the government parties down south, I would be literally hammering that every day. But maybe, I don't know, you guys tell me, maybe down south the people just don't care.
No, they have tried to hammer it in the past as well. But look, people in the South are not voting on what's going on in the North.
Why does that not land?
It doesn't. People in the South are not voting on what goes on in the North. People in the South are only seeing naturally your own. So it's the same with people in the North as well. People in the North are not getting out of bed in the morning wondering, well, what's going on in Kerry? And the same thing, a unionist isn't getting out of bed in the morning thinking, oh, I wonder what's going on in Sheffield today. Northern Ireland. No, it's just people vote on their own immediate little bit less so here, but socioeconomic concerns. Here, obviously, we've got our own kind of mixed up dynamic of that, but we vote on our own local issues.
But if Gavin said something in Westmont in the House of Commons that was completely diametrically opposed to what Emma Little Pengelly said in Stormont, like, that would be a big news story. But
this is what I wanted to ask you, Tim. This is what I wanted to ask you, Tim. I mean, I want to get your thoughts on kind of Emma Pengelly's weighing into this, because, Emma Pengelly's going, about, the Sinn Féin economy minister and the first minister, and they hold these economic portfolio finance. I mean, I would put back to Emma that, you let them take all the economic portfolios because you pick something else. But what did you make of that? I mean, Sinn Féin kind of, do they need to? I mean, we had Kiva on the pod a couple of weeks ago. Is she trying to sabotage the Northern Ireland economy? I mean, when you asked her about Royal Portrush over Kilmarnock, did I get that right? Portmarnock, Kilmarnock's in Scotland. Sorry, Portmarnock. She said Portrush was her thing. So.
Well, I just think this whole thing, I mean, we're giving it far too much attention here, because it really is just pantomime season coming early. Richard Madeley was the DM, and, you've got Buttons as Michelle O'Neill, and leading boy was Mary Lou McDonald, and, I don't know who Emma Pengelly is in the whole thing. It was just absolute pantomime, because the whole thing is just ridiculous. Northern Ireland is not an economic basket case. Because, we see, in comparing it to other regions within the UK and even some regions down south, Northern Ireland, is not the worst. Northern Ireland is not the best, but in some things, it's
amazing in West End I don't put that on their brochures. Northern Ireland, not the worst.
We're not the best, we're not the worst. But there are some metrics where we perform second to the south of England, to London. Some things in and around poverty. Northern Ireland does perform very well. So there are swings around.
We're good at poverty.
We're not. Well,
Northern Ireland is brilliant at poverty.
But we're nowhere near the worst in the UK. Like, literally nowhere near the worst in the UK.
Yes, because we are very generously subsidised by the rest of the UK, more than any other region.
But then on the other side of things,
you see this debate that goes, and it's going to roll on and gain momentum probably over the next few years. The idea that the South could or could not afford to take on the North. The one thing people miss in all of this is that if there was some kind of settlement, it would not be a kind of fall off a cliff edge type settlement. The subsidy for Northern Ireland would not necessarily stop in year one. It would probably be phased out over a long period of time.
You think not?
The Treasury would take your arm off for that deal now.
Well, look,
you think not? Right, okay. So then they're going to have to go see it with Scotland, and they'll give that deal to Scotland. See, that's where this all falls apart. It's predicated on an assumption. London will still pay a bit of cash. The difficulty you've got is, that might hold true in the 1980s, the difficulty you've got is that with Scotland looming, the negotiations with Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, if there ever was one, and it's not going to happen. So now we really are in pantomime season. Oh no, he isn't. Oh yes, he is. I mean, this is almost a ridiculous conversation.
Pantomime queen in this debate.
Again, I think that
you've just cut off Michael's joke. The biggest pantomime queen. Come on, Michael.
Okay, I'll have to tell you now. It's Graham Gudgeon. He tells you you're better off in Northern Ireland than if you were in the Republic. And he ignores numbers. Like, do you remember when we were going to cut the corporation tax rate here in Northern Ireland? And Sammy Wilson was involved in a debate with the Treasury about whether that, because the Treasury said you have to pay for it. So he said, well, that's 200 million. And the Treasury said, no, it'd be about 300 million that you would have to pay us back. Well, the equivalent figure in the South is 12 billion. And that kind of shows you the difference of scale in the Northern economy and the Republic. Partition has been a disaster for our basket case economy. Sorry.
Well, David's going to give us an economic lesson here. Come on, David, you've been trying to get in.
No,
Tell us your big economic lesson that we need to learn.
I just think
British
the whole thing
government Dave here.
I think the whole thing about this invention is and I think the pro-unity advocates just make the mistake of, well, we need to keep on with all these British kind of subsidies in the aftermath of Irish unity. I don't actually believe that is the case. Like, this isn't. I think that there's too much within nationalism that hasn't adjusted their kind of economic thinking of the South beyond 1994. You know, the South can afford Northern Ireland. Again, even Newton Emerson, not a fan of Irish unity, has said Irish unity is more than affordable. It is more than affordable. The key thing that we get ourselves tripped up on is where we make things like an Irish NHS, Britain paying pensions, and we need this British programme, but we're just going to put the tricolour over this one. I just think, look, if it's a new Ireland, it needs to be new. We need to have the confidence to stand on our own arguments and merits, of which there are many, to sell a united Ireland. Well, and that's just thing, but that's a bit different.
Well, going back to our first topic, I think what we saw over the weekend is a new Ireland. They don't want a unionist about the place. I mean, if I was advising your New Ireland, Ireland conversation, I'd be saying, stop. You've got to reach out to unions and show them they have a place in Northern Ireland. Stop putting out silly tweets and silly articles in the paper.
You do, well, you do, Tim. Well, you do, Tim, and you do have a place.
We don't want a unionist about the place.
You're engaging.
Well, that's not Tim. We've literally talked about this. We've literally talked about a story today where a group of East Belfast GAA kids can't go and play on a cricket pitch. Like, come on, you know, who's not welcome in different places? Sorry, Michael.
You were on a sticky wicket there. Yeah, no, it's. No, I think the economic debate is just one that's going to just trundle on, and I think the numbers all suggest that the Republic could afford Northern Ireland. Couldn't in the past. Could now.
Yeah, of course it could. It can more than afford.
I think the difficulty is, coming back to the story we're talking about, is it just does fascinate me that Mary Lou McDonald can talk out of both sides of her mouth on this issue. And I find it genuinely fascinating on all the issues that they do that on.
Well, welcome to politics, Tim. That's what politicians typically do.
But it's amazing. They never get pulled up on it. And it's absolutely fascinating.
But they get pulled up by the electorate. The electorate, they've gone into several elections coasting along, expecting to get a big result, and it didn't get it, you know? And they're afraid to run Mary Lou.
Down south.
Yeah.
Well, look, the only reason we're talking about this is because, again, Richard Madeley framed it this way. Again, it was not prompted by, if you go look at the previous answer that Mary Lou gave, she didn't set up that question. It was Richard Madeley by himself who set it up and framed it that way.
Richard Madeley, famous for doing an Ali G impression, the Agony Aunt in the Daily Telegraph, and an Alan Partridge tribute show. Yeah.
Well,
that's quality, top-notch culture.
Look, Good Morning Britain, I still think is the most watched breakfast programme in the UK. So if you as a unionist are okay with that on that type of platform, with someone saying that about Northern Ireland,
we'll bring Richard and Judy into the United Ireland with us.
Absolutely, brilliant. Okay, gents, thanks for going right. Gents, thanks for going around the houses on that. We're going to go on to our next topic. Okay, we're going to do a quick fire on this. Two issues which kind of leapt out at us today on the day of recording. The issue of legacy is back in the headlines as the government attempts a different approach from its predecessors. So, at Prime Minister's Questions today, the SDLP MP, Colin Eastwood, asked the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, about the issue of legacy. So, Starmer responded by saying that there was a false promise of immunity made by the last government as a result of the legacy bill that the previous Conservative government had put through. So, Starmer pledged in his answer to Colin Eastwood to create a secure and transparent system that protects veterans from unjustified prosecutions whilst giving victims confidence in the process. So the way I interpreted that was there's kind of something for everyone in the audience. Keir Starmer started his answer by prefacing his support for veterans. So I'm going to start with you first, Tim. Tim, does that even sound remotely achievable in this? Because I was kind of neither here nor there about what Keir Starmer's trying to achieve here.
Well, for someone who's talked nonsense for a year now, I mean, this is just more of the same, I think. Look, on this issue, I'll be very, very quick on this. There's two choices. You prosecute everybody to the full force of the law. You just get on with it and you just do it. You take prosecutions as they come. You gather evidence. You bring it before courts. You prosecute it, or you give everybody an immunity. That's it. That's the only way to solve that. And until we choose one, prosecute everybody or give everybody immunity.
Which should you choose, Tim?
Do you know what, Michael? I don't care. Prosecute everybody. Give everybody immunity. You know. Just let's get out of this jam, because I think neither is a preferable option, because an option one where you prosecute everybody, let's face facts, it's most likely to be security forces who get prosecuted. You give an immunity in that, victims are going to be rightly hurt, tortured, haunted, because the person who caused them that harm is not going to be brought to justice, be that someone who's in a terrorist organisation or be that somebody in the security forces. Neither option's great, but just pick one. Let's get on with it.
And the other thing is that we use the term victims. Not all victims want the same thing. Some victims just want to know what happened to their loved one, and that's enough for them. Others do want those prosecutions. So it is a really, really, and also because we had in the Good Friday Agreement, we destroyed a lot of weapons. Weapons were put beyond use, but a lot of that was actually, I mean, Tim, keep me right here. Someone in legal, that would be considered evidence for making a prosecution. So that's another problem. Michael, what did you make of the response that Keir Starmer gave to Parliament?
It was fairly strident that he's blaming the Tories for raising expectations among veterans. But I'm actually right with Tim on this. Time has passed, so much time has passed, so much evidence is lost, so many people have passed on, that pursuing this to the nth degree is not going to do very much for anyone. And I know the SDLP and others are more purist on this. They want everyone prosecuted who can possibly be prosecuted. I think a lot of people have already suffered a lot just by having this prospect hanging over their heads for so many years. So I'm actually sympathetic to trying to wrap some of this stuff up and putting it behind us.
Yeah, okay. Right, and we'll finish up on this topic. So the front page of the Irish News on Wednesday highlights MLA expenses, okay? So just under £2 million has been spent in expenses by our MLAs over the past year. So there have been claims from everything from social media equipment to newspaper subscriptions, and air fryers as well have been made. So I'm going to start with you first on this, Michael. What did you make of this? I mean, justifiable expenditure, or is it a waste of money?
Overall, it's the political silly season, so this stuff comes out and we look for a wee bit of scandal, and there's not much there, to be honest. The politicians are claiming, by and large, what they're allowed to claim. Okay, the odd thing like Matthew O'Toole has a subscription to the Financial Times, he's claiming, but it's good to know that he's reading that, and that's informing himself properly. Paul Given,
I've already teased him about
Paul
that.
Given bought an air fryer, and it's good to see a minister who's dedicated to value for money, because I know my air fryer costs a lot more than £29. So well done, Paul. That's value for money.
Must have got it in the middle. You got it in the middle aisle in the middle.
Yeah, and to be fair, to be fair to the Irish News and to the MLAs making the claim, no one is implying anyone's done anything wrong here or outside the rules. It's just these things get published. And they've just done a collation
just a detailed analysis of the mileage might show some amusing differences between people who represent the same area. But other than that, I couldn't think of anything really to dig up and kick up a fuss about.
I think Jamie Bryson will be happy to note that somebody in the Alliance Party did buy a latte machine, I think.
Brilliant, I missed that one too. There we go, latte. I don't know what the thing with lattes is. I've never ever had one in my life.
The only other thing that interested me was Steve Aiken's mobile phone bill, £200 a month. My goodness, I'm lazy, I'm out of contract, and I should be changing my mobile phone bill. And when I get
he's maybe having to ring people in submarines and stuff.
But when I get the money saving expert email every week, and it says, you'd be paying like £5.37 a month, I really need to get on that. But like, how many months do you need to be sitting out of contract at £200 a month to actually then take action on that?
Yeah. Well, do you know what though? The good thing is that these things do get published. As the electorate, we do get to see them, and we can make fun of our MLAs as well for some of the things that they're doing as well. So it was an interesting report. Right, gents, thank you so much for going around the houses with me on that. Just a reminder, we have 2 sister podcasts. So we have the Hollywood Sources podcast, if you want to listen to everything going on in Scottish politics. We have the Whitehall Sources podcast, if you want to listen to everything going on in Westminster. Callum McDonald is the host of both of those podcasts. Make sure you check both of them out wherever you get your podcasts if you've liked what you've heard here. Remember, you can get in touch with us via WhatsApp. You can send us your questions, your comments. Send us a voice note. We'd love to hear it. So 0333 404 6507. Remember to use the word Stormont. You can also drop us an email, hello@stormontsources.com. That's all we have time for this edition of Stormont Sources. Thank you for listening in, and please keep in touch with your ideas, questions, and comments. That's all from Tim, Michael, and myself. We'll see you next week.